is something that I will remember and cherish. I also hope that we will get a number of visitors who I have made contact with to follow up with email and to engage in some joint research, and also to perhaps come down to New Zealand sometime in the future. Have, I guess, a small country, a small number of people, and our systems are quite different from many of the things that we've been hearing about here. I'll just make a couple of observations while the team there managed to blind the panel with the projector light. I had prepared a small number of transparencies or slides which I want to put up in a few moments, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, let me just comment on a couple of governance issues in New Zealand. We had massive reforms in 1984 when a government was elected and it found that the country was bankrupt. So what it did was a massive sell-off of state-owned enterprises. Those state-owned enterprises came under corporate accounting as required by the Institute of Chartered Accountants for all companies in New Zealand. So there was no difference between what those new companies had to do and what old companies had to do. And in fact, the accounting requirements and the requirements of the Securities Commission, which lays down laws regarding independent directors, independent chairpeople and so on, apply to all state-owned enterprises in New Zealand as they apply to all publicly owned companies. So there's no difference. All state sector companies in New Zealand also had to adopt IFRS at the same time as the private sector organisations. So it's a very different world in which we live, and it is so interesting to hear how India is moving and progressing. The fact that the people were able to talk about this sort of thing so freely here, I think is a great indicator of the way forward, the pathway that will move India and governments in this country. Well, I guess we've just got to the point where we can't make that look any better than what we've got. What we can see is its concluding remarks, which means it probably ought to be pretty short. And it's got my name, which is always encouraging. Right, let me say that I got some insights from this conference. And like my colleague Bob, who seems to be far more articulate in expounding on what he observed, I found that the enhancing of corporate governance as a field of study and practice was really strong, really dynamic. The people were getting into it, they weren't holding back, they were saying what they saw, and they were calling the shots really strongly, and I think that that is important. I think there was a genuine concern for enhancing the outcomes for our people, or you might like to say, for your people. The idea of CSR and how strong and how forceful that articulation is, I think showed an ethical underpinning and a genuine concern for people. A paper today on spirituality, which frightened me when I saw the title, yet when I speak of spirituality as something internal as well, not only in terms of a God, but a strength and a spirit inside, wanting to do the right thing, then I thought that theme also pervaded some of the papers that people proudly presented at this conference. And I think there's a mapping for potential and future research. Okay, the things we heard about, there was corporate social responsibility, there was a concern for the environment, a concern for sustainability, and sustainability I think is a key theme that needs to be embraced. Communication was strong. I thought there was really interesting material about corporate governance, about the area of activism from investors and communication. How do you get the message out there? Who is going to be brave enough to write the stories that let people know that things are happening which are either good or strong? You need clear signalling into a market if you want efficiency. And that strategic thinking and ethical foundation I thought was really strong. Board performance was indeed a theme. We talked about ownership structure, board composition, and I think that's really an interesting issue. Did you know that in Norway the legislation requires that 40% of all board members are women? In New Zealand we only have 9% of women on the board. Really quite surprising when our Chief Justice is a woman, our last Prime Minister is a woman, and somebody else important was a woman. Oh, the Governor General was a woman, and we have a woman Queen as well. We had a woman Maori Queen as well. Okay, so women play a hugely important role in New Zealand, yet only 9% of board members. I wouldn't like to guess what percentage they are in India, but I think it is not enough, yeah. I think that might be the answer. Board committees, board monitoring and risk management were themes that were talked about, and I think they are very important. Right? I think we're just about at the end. Corporate governance issues relating to disclosure, the regulatory issues, the stakeholders, succession planning, I think was very important as well. Now these are all themes that are in the literature, all themes that need to be developed further, and the Indian story needs to be told because India is such a strong and emerging economy. New Zealand has recently signed a free trade agreement with India. Why seek such an arrangement with India? Because we recognise that this country, as a democratic country, is going to be one of the major economic forces in the next decade. And bloody hell, it's better to be a mate than an enemy, isn't it? So New Zealand as a small country wants to be tied and wants to be close to India, and we need to know a lot more about the Indian way of doing things. So we talked about director professionalism, director sex selection and succession, director education, director mix of purposes, goals, and a whole range of other things. Now, is that the last slide, Peter? It is just about the last slide. I wanted to do a little bit of publicity for my Institute of Business Research, and the reason why I wanted to put that up there is that after these sessions today, I hope that I will have an opportunity to talk with Professor Mishra about the linkages that we might make which will allow us to be involved with this sort of conferences into the future, how we might foster and strengthen the opportunity for some students to come down to New Zealand to do PhD programs in the governance area, and of course to try and arrange visiting links with scholars, because as I said, we need to be much more aware and understanding of the Indian way of doing things. I think we do have some things we want to share, but to stand and tell you how good we are after the thrashings that we have endured in cricket recently would not be something that I would relish trying to do. So Once again, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for the excellent summing up. I welcome Director of IPE, Professor R.K. Mishra, for giving his concluding remarks.
Respected Rana Sahab, respected Lal Sahab, respected Padam, Dr. Padam, respected Professor Smith, respected Mr. Block, and we are very senior people here. We must mention those names. Professor Lakshminarayana, our Guru, yes, Professor Gumat, an outstanding expert in the area of management, Professor Deep Madhur, known everywhere in the world, Mr. Satyanand Das. Professor Locke mentioned about the FTA between India and New Zealand. I would only suggest that kindly see that it becomes a treaty in economic cooperation, so that not only goods move between the two countries, and people and capital also moves. And that certainly I think will result into a greater synergy between New Zealand and India. You may ask me why did we choose New Zealand, and we had very specific reasons for that. Many of us have been studying New Zealand corporate practices for the last 15 years, and in my view, I think, and in our view rather, I would say, the record of New Zealand is impeccable when it comes to transparency in accounting. I don't believe any other country in the world which had a better reporting system than New Zealand. That's one. We talked about voluntary disclosure today, we talk of timeliness, they are the best. That apart, when we talk of performance of public sector enterprises, though they might have dismissed it, their enterprises were doing well in 10 years back. I think that was under reason. Of course, Gita is there, so Gita is the third reason. Let me tell you, I think very straight. But let us come back. Let's talk about this conference. What did we see? And one very important thing was the results of working together. When two institutions, Waikato, which is a very great institution, one of the outstanding universities and a great management school, and an IPE, an Indian school, when they come together, you can say what can be produced. So I think what is important today is that all of us are working, but we should not work in isolation. It is always good. Of course, there will be always disparity in the levels of thinking and expertise. But leaving that, what is important is coming together and working together. When you do that, in that process, those who are better, they become the best. And those who are not good, they become better. So I think we should have more and more opportunities where so-called good, the best, the better, they should come. And that will certainly improve, I think, quality of thinking, not only in India but anywhere in the world. Another very important thing that came out was that when you work together, you produce many good leaders. Now you can take, in the case of this conference, my younger colleagues. I saw very clearly great potential in my younger colleagues, and we could see that we have in our school, IPE, out of 60, I think there are 15 20 leaders, I think they are emerging. Very clearly, I think they can do now any bigger thing on any scale. They can organize a UN convention, I am very sure. If that happens, they can do it. And they can do it without any blemish. They can do it very well. Geeta over there and Sheetal here. Then we have Dr. Mitla Sahai. We have Kiran over there. And then we have our colleagues, Dr. Kanti, Jashi Ravidan there, Dr. Reshmi Alman Thomas there, our Udam Singh and our younger colleagues, over here. And another thing which was very interesting was that when it's a work and accepted work, then the distinction between teachers and supporting staff just goes up. And we saw here our supporting staff, Mr. Sidki, Mr. Upender, Mr. Govardhan, I think they did extremely good work. So what I was trying to emphasize was that in the process of such international conferences, you see that we then realize, I think, our potential, and we also see that we have a lot of, unused potential. We can exploit it much more. Beyond that, I think what I saw was we had excellent academic leadership coming in our sessions, and our chairpersons, they did extremely a very good job. They had full command. They knew, what they had to do, and they knew what they had to emphasize. And they also, I think, surmised the results very, very well. And I must compliment them. All our chairpersons did an outstanding job. Please give a big. When we say that, let us go back to our inaugural session and plenary, and I'm sure that we had great knowledge and wisdom coming from experienced people who are now formulating public policy on the one hand, those who are running public sector enterprises, very large public sector enterprises, large ones, I think, mammoth public enterprises. Somebody used the word, I think Professor Guman used the word behemoth, I think. Very large kind of public enterprises, there are global enterprises, there are Maharatnas, there are champions, I think, about to talk in Korea. We had, I think, excellent wisdom coming. Professor Ramarao, he made a very great appeal, I think. And he also told, I think, something very important. How a time has come that R&D, I think, can be a lever, I think, for the entire world to improve its prosperity, its potential, and I think maybe happiness and satisfaction. And when you do that, business of business is certainly business, but it should be plus something more than that. And there, I think, there are questions of creativity, there are questions of innovation, there are questions of sustainability, there are questions of environmental protection, and I think certainly, I think maybe we have to balance the question of as corporate social responsibility. Now, what is the takeaway and what is the future plan? And you don't accept that, you have your own conscience. I think you can then understand whether you can improve upon that or you can have marginal adjustments on this or that side. So it's always good that we open up, we talk of openness. I think I'm sure that we should tell others, our colleagues, peers, our seniors, our juniors, our research scholars, because we are all now going on one path only. We are fellow travelers, and if we are fellow travelers, it's always good, I think, to exchange experience. There I feel that when we say globalization is just not a concept. It's just not an idea. It's an issue you see very much here. And what should we be doing is that in the case of one word, I think let us come together. We should see what is the New Zealand experience, what is the Australian experience, what is the American experience. Can we improve upon that? And if, I think, wrongly or inadvertently, we have copied something like Indian science policy, when it was just getting clear, Mrs. Gandhi saw that, and somebody told her it is a copy of the British science policy. So just she withdrew. If that's the thing, at least we know what we are doing. If something we are doing well, I think that is the American experience, that is the British experience, that is the Russian experience. That's very important today. I think the question was what should be the size of the boat. That's a very interesting issue. What Professor Mathur was telling, I went through long back, L.C. Gupta did good research, S.K. Chakrabarti did good research, and what he told today, they also had, I think, put something between 7 and 12. That I think, they had a sample of 1,000 and they took as numbers. We have taken the case numbers. In the Indian case, in the public sector enterprises, we found that it is around 7 to 8. But of course, there are extremes. This